Right, hello, here we are. It's lesson 3, which effectively for you is lesson 3, the second of my 5 videos on evil. Right, so you've done some basic groundwork on the nature of evil and human evil, moral evil versus natural evil, and some of the questions surrounding that. I want to look today specifically at Augustine and the way in which his understanding of evil has been built up. Now you remember we said a lot about Genesis 1, 2 and 3, and particularly Genesis 2 and 3, because Augustine sees that story, the story of the fall of Adam and Eve, what we call the lapsarian fall, of the human state lapsing into degenerative disorder from the perfect world that God created. That is central to Augustine's understanding of evil. And so that's very important to him, not just that it was some myth or some fable or some story told to illustrate a point, but for Augustine it was quite clearly, literally true that there was a real Adam, there was a real Eve, and that as a result of the sin of eating from the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, they fell into a state where they were out of kilter with God. And if you remember, we said the whole of the world turned against mankind, that it wasn't just moral evil, it was also physical, natural evil. The world turned against mankind as a result of what happened. You remember the ground that previously offered up fruit for Adam to eat was no longer offering up fruit. It was covered with thorns and briars and stopped him from being able to get his food. And that I suppose was a metaphor for the whole world closing up and not allowing Adam to exist in the way in which God had expected mankind to exist. All right, so where do we go with this? Well, Augustine had a very clear idea that evil was privation, P-R-I-V-A-T-I-O-N, and this was taken up later by Thomas Aquinas and therefore the whole of the Catholic Church. Now let me just explain what privation is. Evil is privation. God can only create good. God cannot, for Augustine, create evil. I mean, the idea of Irenaeus was complete anathema, completely against what Augustine believed. We'll come to Irenaeus on another occasion. But you need to understand that for Augustine, God cannot create evil. He can only create good, and therefore he can't even think about evil. He can't even consider evil as a thing. Evil is, instead of being a positive thing, evil is actually then a lack of what it takes for something to be good. And this is all taken from Aristotle, the idea that everything is striving for perfection, striving to be something. All Aristotle's ideas about cause and effect are all about striving to be complete. Okay, now, what do we need to be complete? Well, you and I, to be complete, need to have basic things about us. We expect a human being to have 2 arms, 2 legs, to have a torso, to have a central body, to have hair, to have eyes, to have ears, to have a nose and mouth, all these things. And if we don't have those things, or those things are in any respect defective, then we have to say there is a privation. Notice that's different from saying an absence. A budgerigar doesn't have reason, for example. Well, we're not going to say that because a budgerigar doesn't have reason that it is somehow defective. It's just an absence. In the same way, I don't have wings. Well, that doesn't really matter that I don't have wings. That's just an absence. It's not a privation. No, a privation for Augustine is when something does not have what it ought to have to be 100% complete. I, for example, as you know only too well, have a little bit less hair than I ought to have, and I wear contact lenses or glasses, and therefore I have a privation of all my hair. I have a privation of my eyesight, in the sense that they fall short of what it is intended to be fully human. So, as Aquinas has developed this idea, Augustine has developed this idea of privation, he talks about something falling short of what it should be. Okay, so today I want you to go and do some work on Augustine and his idea of theodicy, which was based on all this point about the privation of of good being evil. And I'd like you to look at the free will defence, which is the classic defence, sometimes shortened to the FWD, the classic defence for God against evil, but it only really works for Augustine's theodicy. The basic idea behind it is this, that God wanted mankind to love him. You can only get love as a result of free will. You can't program someone to love you. If you program them to love you, it's not love. Whatever it isn't love. Love has to be given freely and given of your own volition. Okay, so for God to have man loving him freely, he had to give him free will. But in the process of giving him free will, he had to accept that there was the possibility he might choose to do the reverse. In other words, choose not to love him, and therefore go his own way and choose to reject him. And of course, the story goes that, according to Judeo-Christian tradition, mankind decided not to love God as fully as he might have done. He decided to go his own way, and by going his own way, he rejected the possibility of perfect goodness that God had offered him. And so